Well, how many people have seen the movie Christmas Vacation? Who will admit to seeing the movie? There you go. I've seen it, and one of the scenes I just recently recalled was the scene when Clark Griswold's got all the lights on the house, and he's got his family out in the front yard. The first time they try it to get the lights on, they don't work, and then he gets them all back. He gets it all figured out, and he gets them back out there in the front lawn, and they're all these lights ready to be lit up, and he plugs it in, the lights come on, and the neighbors wake up, and then he's going from one family member to the other. All these family members had come in from out of town, and then he gets to the end of the line, and Cousin Eddie's there with his RV. Do you remember Cousin Eddie in the RV, right? And he says, surprised to see you here. And he says, don't worry, we're only staying a month. And we think about that. How many family members have traveled from out of town to be with us tonight? Yeah, we got some folks from out of town. Hopefully no Cousin Eddies with RVs, but we've all traveled. So anybody here come from the West here this evening? Anybody in a Western state? Anybody from far away? All right, how far away?
Kansas.
How far? Kansas. Anybody further than Kansas? California, that's all the way. Anybody from another country tonight? So how long did it take you? I'm going to go with Kansas. California. How long did it take you to get here? 5 hours. 5 hours by airplane, right? If you had driven that distance, what would have taken you?
I don't know,
3
3 days.
3 days. All right, so that's a lot. Now, how many people have taken a long car trip? Long, boring car trip, cross states, and everybody's like, I can't, this is so boring. And we think about how so long and boring it is. Well, do you know that it took Mary and Joseph 9 days by foot or in donkey to get from Bethlehem all the way, from Nazareth all the way to Bethlehem? And actually, Joseph had a couple route options to do this. It could have taken longer, might have taken a little less, but he could have taken 2 routes. One was through the region of Samaria, and they often didn't go through Samaria because the Samaritans and the Jewish folks, they didn't get along too well. So oftentimes Samaria was avoided. But to avoid Samaria, you had to go around along the Jordan River, and along the Jordan River, it was adding another 20 miles to your trip. So you had 2 options, the direct route, and then you had the indirect route, or the scenic route, as we call it. Now, if you were Joseph, which route would have you taken? I mean, I know about men in the room, at least the guys. Don't we look at the map and we try and figure out what's the best way to get to wherever we're going, the least amount of bathroom stops, the least amount of stops for food or whatever, right? You're right? Anybody with me tonight? Right. So which one you've taken, the direct route or the scenic route? Direct. Yes, the scenic direct, yeah. I'm going to go with the direct route. I think Joseph probably took the direct route because he wanted to get his pregnant wife there as quickly as possible. And he wanted to be direct. Now, he could have taken the other route. We don't know actually which route they took. It could have been that because of the census, more people were taking the direct route, and so there were more people along that route, made it maybe a little bit easier. But we really don't know. We do know that they had to go because the governor had said, we want to take a census. Now, the purpose of the census was for taxation, was to make sure they could count everybody and then count heads so they could count taxes. So this was about filing your taxes. What a great and glorious thing to travel for 9 days. So they travel this route, and it's actually, I came across that we actually have a lot of archaeological evidence about census taking in this time period. And actually one of the orders says this. It says, this is from the Prefect of Egypt orders. It says, seeing that the time has come for the house-to-house census, it is necessary to compel all those. Now, how do you think the Roman army compelled people to go places? With soldiers. And then he said, who for any cause whatsoever are residing outside their districts. Did you hear that? Any cause whatsoever. That means no excuses. It doesn't matter whether or not your wife is pregnant. You have to go. Because we can't understand why they would go when she's full term and they have to take this 9-day journey. Anyway, it goes on and says, outside their districts to return to their homes. There they may carry out the regular order of the census, or another way of saying, prepare to be taxed. So this wasn't a joyride they were on. This wasn't a journey that they were taking that they wanted to take. It was the worst possible time for them to take that, but that's the way God works behind the scenes. because the child was to be born in Bethlehem. And so it took a census and some Roman soldiers and a governor to help Joseph and Mary get to Bethlehem. And then when they get there, things aren't much better, are they? Because everybody else has come to Bethlehem that day. And so it's interesting because we often think of the busyness of the Bethlehem town, and it was probably a smaller town, and we hear about the innkeeper. We hear about there being no room in the inn. And so the inn, actually, the word used for inn here is the same word used for upper room or guest room. And so really what Joseph would have done was remember, this is his hometown. He may have gone to his hometown, known some relatives in his hometown, and went to his relative's house and said, is there any room in the guest room? Is there any room in the upper room for my wife and us to stay? And that's where it says there was no room in the inn, or it could have been translated, there is no room in the upper room or the guest room. Because in the first century, houses were built with upper rooms and guest rooms. In fact, just recently they uncovered some archaeological evidence in 2009 of a house from 100 BC in the town of Nazareth. And in the town of Nazareth, they were able to uncover this home. And actually, we've got a floor plan very similar to that home in the first century. So if you take a look at this, you'll notice on the right-hand side of the screen is this place called the courtyard. And that's kind of like the family room. That was where the water was kept. That's where meals were cooked, and the family would gather, and people would gather to discuss things. Then there were other rooms built off of that, and then you'll see above the courtyard is the upper room, or the guest room. And then beside that is another room where the merchant might have been, or a shop might have been. And so this is what a first century home looked like. Interestingly enough, when Mary and Joseph were married, when a man and woman were married in the first century, they would first get engaged, and during the engagement period, the groom would go to his father's house and build an addition onto the courtyard. And so you might have a courtyard with multiple rooms and multiple homes attached to it as the family grew and extended. And so Joseph should have gone and built an addition to his father's house for them to live in, but I think he had his hands a little bit busy because it was a rushed marriage, rushed affair, and so they got married. And probably Joseph didn't have time to do that. So when he goes to Bethlehem, he's going there to find some place to stay. But the innkeeper, actually we don't even know if there was an innkeeper or not, because it just says there was no room in the inn. We always assume there's an innkeeper. It would have been someone who was either the innkeeper or the master of the house. The master of the house would have made the decision to say, yeah, we've got room or don't have room. But in this case, all the rooms were taken. All the rooms were full. In fact, people were even known to sleep on the rooftops, pitch tents on the flat roofs of the homes. And they were probably people pitched tents on the rooftops. They were in the houses, in the rooms, in the courtyard. The place was full. And so the master of the house, the innkeeper, says to this couple when they arrive, Mary and Joseph, who may have been a relative, said, guys, we really don't have any room. We're full. Everybody else is already here. They got here ahead of you. We don't have any room. The place is full. Now, another reason that the master of the house might have said that was also for another reason. And the other reason was because childbirth was messy. And in the first century, a woman was unclean for the first 40 days after childbirth. And so if he were to put Mary and Joseph in with all the other people and she gave birth to Jesus, then all the people that came in contact with her would have been considered unclean. And so this is kind of a practical issue for the the innkeeper, the master of the house. He's saying, look, we don't have a lot of room, and we know you're going to mess things up. So let's just move along. And so they actually send them to the stable. And that's what the guy probably thought, well, what's the least I can do? Well, here's a stable. You couldn't see it in the image earlier, but there's a little word in there. They found that sometimes these homes were built in the hillside adjacent to a cave. And they believe that Bethlehem, I've been to the church in Bethlehem where they have built a church where they believe Jesus was born. It was actually in a cave. And that the stable would have been in an adjacent cave to the home. That's where Jesus was born among the animals and in that cave. And so they send this couple into the cave, into the stable. Now, we sang tonight a great hymn, Joy to the World. And in that first line of Joy to the World, it talked about, let every heart prepare him room. And we just sang, even in another hymn just now, we sang about making room and enthroning Christ in our hearts. To make Christ room. Now, who do you think is the innkeeper of your heart? We are, right? We're the innkeepers. We're the masters of our houses. We're the ones who are asked to make room for Christ in our lives. But practically speaking, like the innkeeper, we say, not enough room. It's all full. I'm too busy chasing other things, doing other things, pursuing other things. My heart is attached to other things and desires and careers and other stuff. And so our hearts are too full, our schedules are too full, our lives are too full to make room for Christ. And so we say, now's not a good time. My life's too full, Jesus. I can't allow you to come in right now. If you could come back when everybody wasn't here anymore, when all these other pursuits weren't going on, when all these other desires weren't competing with my heart, if you could come back at another time, then maybe I can make room. And we make it a practical decision to keep Jesus out of our lives. And let's be honest, too. Jesus is just messy. Jesus is just going to mess our lives up. I mean, Jesus is the one who said, I want you to love your enemies. Have you ever tried loving an enemy? It gets kind of messy. Jesus is the one that said, I want you to love other people unconditionally. Have you ever tried loving somebody unconditionally? It can get pretty messy. Or he's the one that said, forgive as God forgave you. Forgiveness, that can get really messy. And so we say, Jesus, I really don't have time for you, and I really don't have room for you, and really, you're just going to mess my life up. And so we just don't make room for Jesus. Now, I want you to notice something in the text tonight. That when Jesus was born, Mary and Joseph took him and they wrapped him in bands of cloth and they laid him in a manger, right? And then the shepherds and the angels went to the shepherds and the angels said to the shepherds, hey, you go to the town of Bethlehem and you'll find a baby lying in a manger. And then the shepherds get there and they see baby Jesus and they find him in a... You guys got it. Luke talks about it there in the text. He repeats that again and again. Now, what's a manger? What's a manger? I know it's Christmas Eve, but you don't have to be quiet. What's a manger? It's a feeding trough, right? It is the place where animals were fed. It's on the screen right now, I think. And so it's that place where the hay would have been. The animals would feed from this. This is the feeding trough. And so they wrapped them in swaddling clothes, and they think, I've been to the church in Bethlehem, and they actually have a place where there is a stone, it's out of the stone in the cave is cut out a trough for feeding animals in the stone. And so the food would have been placed in that manger. But on this particular night, because the innkeeper didn't make room and they're in the stable, I'm actually kind of glad that the innkeeper did that, because then Jesus is laid in a manger. A manger. Why a manger? Did you know that Bethlehem is named Bethlehem because it means house of bread? And when Jesus came on this planet and he walked among us, he said this to people who were hungry. He said, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry again. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. See, Jesus is the bread of life. So I think it's so cool that he was laid in a manger. The bread of life, the gift of heaven, the gift of God was bread from heaven, manna, life-giving nourishment for our souls. and he laid him in a manger. Jesus also invited those to live with him, and this is what Jesus said. I'm reading out of the Message version tonight. Not all of it will be on the screen, but the last verse will be. It writes like, he said to this when people came to him and he invited them to live with him. He said this, "Are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." See, Jesus didn't come to be a burden. Jesus didn't come to be an add-on to our to-do list. Jesus didn't come to complicate our lives or mess our lives up. Jesus didn't come to fill up our lives, even already full lives. That's not why Jesus came. Practically speaking, in fact, Jesus came to give us life, and life abundant. Jesus came to help us live our lives fully and live our lives to the fullest. His yoke is easy, his burden is light, it says. Jesus didn't come to complicate things. Jesus came to give us something that maybe we've never experienced before. That maybe we haven't realized that the busier we become, I don't know if you've noticed it, but the busier we become and the more we pursue all these things and success in life, the more our souls seem to be starving for something. Maybe it's the bread of life. Christ said, "I am the bread of life." Then maybe that's the reason our souls are starving. You know, Wally was a 9-year-old young man in the 2nd grade. Parents had held him back a couple times and because he just wasn't quite getting it. But he was a big-hearted guy, and he was the biggest, as you can imagine, he was the biggest kid in 2nd grade. And he also didn't like, he had a big heart, and so he didn't like it when the other kids picked on each other, or when bullies picked on kids. He would usually stand up for the underdog. He just had a heart for standing up for people and helping people. And it was time for the Christmas pageant. And he was hoping he'd get a part in the Christmas pageant. And the teacher thought, you know, what would be a good role for Wally? Biggest kid in our class. Doesn't have a whole lot of lines. Let's make him the innkeeper. And so the night of the Christmas pageant came, and Wally was assigned the role of the innkeeper, and he was excited to be there. He was excited to be a part of the Christmas pageant. And sure enough, the time came when Mary and Joseph came up to the inn and knocked on the door, and Wally came out, and they said, "Hey, sir, do you have any room in the inn?" And then he said, "No, there's no room. We're full." And then Joseph began to explain about how his wife was pregnant and how they needed a room and they needed a place because she could give birth at any time. And Wally again said, "No, we're full. You need to go somewhere else." And so Joseph pleaded one more time and asked, you know, "Are you sure there's no other room? Is there someplace you can fit us in?" And all of a sudden, Wally forgot he was in the Christmas pageant. And he forgot what was going on, and he kind of just lost his lines. And he stopped, and he paused, and he got wrapped up in the moment. He didn't know what to say anymore. And then off at the stage, the director was saying, "Go away, there's no room. Go away, there's no room." And finally he snapped back to it, and he said, "Yeah, go away. No room. We don't have any room. You'll need to go away." And so Joseph put his arm around Mary, and they began to walk away. And that's when Wally changed the script. He ran after Mary and Joseph, and he said, No, wait. You can have my room." Yeah. You can applaud Wally. Exactly. That's the response. That's the response that God is hoping for. That we'll receive Christ into our lives, that we'll make room. We'll not only make a little bit of room for Christ, but we'll give Christ the room of our hearts. we'll make him the master of our house, the bread of life, the one who comes to give us life and give it abundantly, the one who comes with an easy yoke and a light burden, not a heavy one who comes to give us peace. Let's pray. God, we thank you for this Christmas, for the gift of your Son, who is the bread of life for us, the one who comes to sustain our souls, to give us nourishment. And we sit here tonight longing for that nourishment, longing for our souls to be touched, to be fed. And God, there's only one person that can do that, and that's Jesus. And we thank you for the gift of your Son, the bread of life, the bread of heaven, come to us to give us this abundant life. I pray, God, that as we have made time out here tonight, we have made room for you in our lives tonight in this service, that we would also make room for you, your Son, in our hearts tonight, and receive this King and give him our room, the Master's room, not the guest room, but the room and all the room he needs to work in our lives, we pray. Amen.